From homeless black man to millionaire, a story that even Donald Trump and Elon Musk admire. The city buzzed like a live wire. Lights flashed, reporters swarmed, and the elite crowd squeezed into the glass canyon of towering skyscrapers. Tonight was the night. Richard Gray would take the stage, the eccentric billionaire known for wild charity stunts and buildings that scrape the sky like urban skyscraper beasts. The air crackled with excitement, whispers threading through the crowd. Will he shock us again? Change the world? Or collapse under his own legend? Richard Gray stood behind the velvet curtains, his heart hammering in his chest. Not from nerves, no, but something else. A sharp prickling in his gut. His perfectly polished shoes tapped a nervous rhythm on the marble floor. He was the king of this playground. Money, power, influence, all wrapped tight in the glossy package he'd worked a lifetime to build. Tonight's charity speech would be the crown jewel. So why did the what? Homeless, steady, unflinching. Richard froze. Marcus didn't flinch under the billionaire's glare. Instead, he stood firm, like a wall no luxury car or velvet rope could bypass. "You're Richard Gray," Marcus said, voice thick with history and pain. "The man who built those towers and leveled my neighborhood." Silence fell like concrete. Richard's throat tightened. His mind scrambled back to the boardroom years ago. The brutal decision, the shutdown of factories, the mass evictions. The community crushed beneath the chase for more money. He'd buried those memories, dressed them up with glossy PR campaigns and grand charity efforts. But Marcus, staring him down, raw, real, shattered the mask. "I did what was necessary," Richard finally said, voice harder than he wanted. Defensiveness rose like a wall. "Business is business." Marcus's gaze burned. "Is it? When your business leaves families homeless? When children cry in the cold because you chose profits over people?" The crowd around them leaned in, whispers buzzing, eyes darting between the two as if caught in a silent war. The city's polished elite felt the rough pulse of reality beneath their pristine cocktail glasses. Then, a sudden blare broke the tension. A nearby screen lit up with a familiar, boisterous figure. Donald Trump's rally erupted on the giant display. His booming voice promised a fix, a savior for the city's chaos, a shining beacon for the broken and the rich alike. The crowd's murmurs shifted. Some cheered quietly, others scowled. Inside Richard's head, chaos exploded. The divide outside, rich against poor, facades against scars, mirrored the turmoil inside his soul. A shivering tightness wrapped his chest, mingled with sweat and doubt. The life he'd built, the power he wielded, now seemed fragile, brittle. Could he hold on to his fortune, his alliances, or would tonight break him open to a brutal truth? Marcus, with his crackling energy, wasn't finished yet. His eyes glittered with something fierce, something dangerous. "I've got a secret," Marcus whispered, voice low but clear enough to stop the noise around them. "One that changes everything." Richard's breath caught. The street's noise dimmed. The city paused. The question hung heavy in the air. Will Richard Gray find the guts to face what he's done? Or will fear lock him back behind his walls? What truth was Marcus ready to spill that could flip their worlds upside down? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're here, drop a powerful like that really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Richard held his breath. The air thickened around him as Marcus leaned closer, eyes shimmering with a wild fire. That secret, it's about your past and your future too. Richard felt the world tilt. The crowd grumbled softly, anticipation twisting in their tight-fitted suits and designer gowns. Me? He stammered, weariness flooding his voice. But Marcus didn't answer, just kept staring, as if peeling back layers of pretense. From deep within the crowd, a woman's voice rang out, sharp, cutting through the noise. You think you can just walk on stage like you didn't destroy lives? You're just a coward in a nice suit. Gasps erupted, and a ripple of discomfort washed over the elite gathering. Richard's heart raced. Whispers erupted in the crowd, faces turning, uncertainty crackling like electricity as eyes flickered back and forth. I'm not a coward! Richard shot back, his pulse quickening. But the woman, Sarah, a local activist he recognized, continued, unwavering. Then prove it! Face your demons! You think you can just bury them under glittering towers? There's blood on your hands, Richard! At that, Marcus stepped forward, and the crowd melted back like a wave receding from shore. I lost everything because of you, Marcus said. Voice steady, but deep pain twisted his features. My home, my family. He pointed a finger, accusatory but vulnerable. And here you are, playing savior while you climbed higher. A flicker of guilt twisted through Richard, sharp and unsettling. The city echoed that twisted guilt. Lights above dimmed as the tension thickened. But before he could gather words, the crowd shifted violently. A loud crash erupted somewhere off stage. The distinct shattering of glass echoed, followed by cries of alarm. The dynamic in the room flipped. Richard turned sharply, instinct pulling him away from Marcus's penetrating gaze. In the chaos, people screamed, startled, as an explosion of glass rained down nearby. Confusion erupted. People pushed and shoved, scrambling for exits, elegant outfits forgotten in the face of fear. Get down! Someone shouted, and suddenly all eyes were wide, all breaths trapped. Richard stumbled back, trying to shield himself, heart racing. Above the din, a piercing alarm blared. Then, a voice crackled on a loudspeaker, unyielding and serious. There has been an incident. We request everyone to remain calm and exit in an orderly fashion. Shock ran through the crowd. Faces turned pale, the glitter and glamour now twisted with panic. But Marcus stood firm, untouched by fear, beauty wrapped in the chaos. He glanced back at Richard, a knowing look passing between them. Are you ready to face your truth? And then, in the uncertainty of it all, something shifted. As the crowd surged toward the exits, Richard spotted a figure slipping away through the shadows. A woman with familiar features, her face hidden beneath a hood. The world seemed to blur. "Wait!" he called out, a feeling gnawing at him. "Who are you?" In that moment, everything froze. The air stilled. The woman turned, revealing piercing eyes that belied a history entwined with his own. Recognition hit him like a punch. The past he tried to bury, returning to thrust him further into chaos. What did she know? What had she seen? Panic twisted in Richard's gut. If he didn't act, he would lose everything. The line between his world and Marcus's blurred further. In the chaos of shattered dreams and urgent escapes, a new truth flickered, dark and powerful. "Richard!" Marcus shouted above the chaos, but Richard's focus was locked on the enigmatic woman. Heart hammering, he wondered if this was the beginning of his reckoning. Would he step into the unknown, or retreat back to the comfortable routine he'd built, ignoring the scream of his conscience? The air vibrated with unanswered questions, and Richard felt the ground shift beneath him. Everything was about to change. Richard swallowed hard, staring at Marcus. The weight of the moment was crushing. The air thick with unspoken truths. "What secret?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Marcus leaned in closer, eyes narrowed. "The truth about your towers. It's not just business. You think you built them? I think you stole them." A ripple swept through the crowd. Gasps echoed against the steel and glass, the tension rising like steam. Richard felt a flush creeping up his neck. "Stole? Yes," Marcus asserted, a steady conviction in his tone. "You took not just buildings, but lives and dreams too. You turned families into numbers and homes into collateral. But you didn't do it alone." Richard's heart raced, his hands trembling slightly. "What do you mean?" "Your partner in all this, Rita Blake. You think she's been on your side? She's been playing her own game. I know things you can't ignore." Rita, his trusted friend and advisor, flashed through his mind. Everyone adored her, a beacon of charm. But now doubt flickered. Could she be part of this darkness? "What are you talking about?" Richard's voice cracked. He was losing ground. He had worked so hard to build his empire, to be revered. "You're wrong." "No," Marcus said, voice steady. "You just don't see it. While you were busy climbing your towers of glass, she was scheming in the shadows." Suddenly, a loud crash split the air. A thick window shattered beside them. Everyone screamed, turning toward the sound. Panic erupted. People darted to the edges, crowding away. "Get down!" Richard shouted, adrenaline surging. Amid the chaos, a figure emerged from the smoke. Rita, her eyes wild, blood trickling from her forehead. She stumbled forward, panting. "Richard, you have to listen. They're coming for you." Confusion swirled in Richard's mind. "Who?" "Your investors. They know everything. The books, the dealings. They're planning to expose you." He felt the world turning upside down, the towers he built, the respect he clawed for, all on the verge of crashing. "Why are you warning me?" Rita's face twisted in pain. I thought I could handle it. Keep it all from you. But I can't. You deserve to know the truth, And I care about you. Her voice broke, vulnerability spilling out amidst the panic. Caring about me doesn't fix what you've done. He stepped back, trying to put distance between them. Betrayal cut deeper than he expected, carving out that space he once thought safe. Marcus stepped in closer, his presence grounding. You need to decide who you trust now. Do you want to save your empire, or will you take a stand against the greed that built it? The crowd was a storm of whispers, confusion, fear. Richard turned, eyes darting between the two. Rita's bloodied face contrasted against Marcus's fierce confidence. Who was lying? Who was telling the truth? The walls of his world seemed to shift, reality crumbling like the shattered glass around them. Do I believe you? Richard muttered to no one in particular. Ha 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 ha. Or do I believe the lies that built my towers? The question hung in the air like a dark cloud, thick with tension. The space between them pulsed, the silence deafening. Richard felt everything he believed in slip through his fingers like sand. Before he could form a thought, a loud siren blared outside, echoing in the building, cutting sharply through the chaos. It was a call to action, but for whom? In that moment, everything felt raw, unsure. The truth ready to spill out. But which truth? His empire teetered, and with it, the lives and dreams tied to it. What was going to happen next? Richard inhaled sharply, the air thick with uncertainty. Would he lean into the chaos, or would he retreat into denial? And who would he choose to stand with when the storm of secrets erupted? Richard inhaled sharply, the air heavy with tension. He couldn't shake the sensation that everything was teetering on the edge. "Do I believe you?" he muttered to himself, feeling the weight of the room close in. Outside, the siren blared louder, adrenaline coursing through his veins. It felt like the city was alive, breathing chaos into the elegance, ripping away the facade. "Who am I supposed to trust?" he almost yelled, desperation creeping into his voice. Just then, an unexpected sound cut through the panic. Sharp and eerie, a series of loud cracks echoing through the glass and steel. The crowd froze, every eye now focused on the giant screen above them where sharp images flickered. Richard squinted, and the screen jerked to life, a desperate broadcast flashing. "Attention! Evacuate the building immediately! We have reason to believe a risk is imminent." Those words hung in the air like smoke. Would it be an attack? A collapse? Richard felt a horrific chill run down his spine. People rushed toward the exits, but he could hardly move, fear rooting him to the spot. "Richard!" Rita shouted, her voice cutting through the rising chaos. "You need to listen to what I—" But before she could finish, the very floor beneath them shifted. An explosion! The ground shook violently, the lights flickered, and glass rained down like shards of ice, glinting dangerously in the dim light. Screams erupted as the building trembled, and Richard stumbled, falling to his knees. He glanced up to see Rita's expression morph from concern to sheer terror. "Get out!" she shouted, eyes wide. "They're targeting you!" His heart stumbled into his throat. Targeting? What did she mean? Just then, in the tumult and chaos, something unforeseen happened. A figure, dark and shrouded, burst through the crowd, moving like a storm. Richard's instincts screamed danger. This wasn't just an escape. This was an assault. "Marcus!" he shouted, the name ripping from his lips. But his voice drowned in the frenzy. The figure lunged toward him, adrenaline sharpening Richard's reflexes. However, as the figure drew nearer, the hood slipped back, revealing a face he never expected. It was his brother, Jake. Thought lost for years, rumored dead in a tragic accident. What? Jake? Richard gasped, disbelief washing over him like a wave. You're alive! In that instant, everything shattered. The weight of family betrayal crashed in waves. Jake's eyes were wild, filled with anger and hurt. You have no idea what you've done, he bellowed, voice hoarse. Richard's world splintered. It wasn't just business anymore. This was personal, raw and deep. Jake, I didn't! You left us. You chose your towers over your blood, Jake spat, stepping forward in determination, his finger pointed accusingly at Richard's chest like a dagger. The crowd buzzed, whispers skimming through the air like sparks. All eyes shifted, confusion and horror mingling, proven by gasps and hushed conversations. Is it true? A voice rang out in the crowd. Did he leave his family? Richard felt the heat of the gaze upon him, the accusations cutting deep, deeper than anything Marcus or Sarah could muster. The plush world he had created suddenly felt tenuous, slipping away like sand. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, he begged, emotions raging, spiraling. I thought I was doing what was right. No, you did what was easy, Jake shot back, his voice steady, filled with a fury Richard had never known. You walk these halls like a king, but the throne is built on graves. The chaos intensified, and at that moment, the structure groaned ominously above them. The people surged back, moving toward any exit they could find. But Richard was frozen, caught between two worlds, the man he was and the ghost of the brother he had lost. Richard! Rita shouted again, her voice breaking through the newfound chaos. They're not just after you! Before he could question further, another explosion rocked the building, this one closer. Debris fell, dust mingling with panic, everyone scrambling for air, for escape. Get out! Jake yelled, pulling Richard with him as the flames flickered on the edges of his vision. We have to let them know the truth. Richard's heart thudded heavily in his chest. What truth? Y chaute obre la chaos, confiona clavando, las relaciones fracturadas, las mentiras, se le vuelan en un pésimo destrucción. Pero ya que todo lo grave a la abuela, otra explosión eco, más poderoso. Una luz brillante llenó la racetín. El sonido fue deteniente y la luz se fue a asombro. En ese momento, lleno de incertidumbre, Richard felt his blood run cold. Everything que él pensaba que conocía de su vida y a los que le confiaba se estaba despolvón, como todo lo estaba pasando. ¿Qué verdad secreta estaba esperando salir? A los caucases caídos. ¡Qué devastación fue! Richard felt the air thicken entre él y Marcus. El peso de 1000 memorias en el silencio, que no estaba preparado. ¡Foque tengo! Un secreto. Marcus le abrió eyes, ojos en el aire, a Richard. It felt like time had stopped, the buzz of the crowd fading away. What secret? Richard asked, a beat too late, defensiveness creeping back in like the chill of a ghost story. Marcus leaned closer, voice tremulous but steady. Your company? It didn't just demolish my neighborhood. He paused, and Richard's heart dropped. It killed my father. The words landed like a hammer, the shock rippling through Richard's chest as he stumbled back a step. His mind whirled, racing through old news articles, demolition sites he'd forgotten. "What are you talking about?" Richard's voice cracked. "Your grand projects? Progress at any cost?" They tore through lives like paper, but one man fought back. My father. When he refused to leave, you had him removed. Not just removed, Marcus spat, rage breaking through his own grief. You buried him under your skyscrapers. No one even noticed. Gasps hummed through the crowd, shock rippling outwards like a clap of thunder. Richard felt himself go cold, sweat breaking on his brow. Conversations stilled. Did he hear that right? "Stop it! That's not true!" he shot back, the words feeling empty even as he said them. He thought of his past, of the meetings and decisions made over drinks, laughs shared over blueprints and profits. He wanted to deny it, to shove the grotesque lie back into the shadows. But Marcus was relentless. "You don't remember? You're so far from people, Richard. But some of us are still here, living in the wreckage." The crowd shifted. Whispers now a roar around them. The two men stood at the eye of a storm. The elite, once so close, now felt miles away. All eyes, the balmy color of the champagne flutes turned dull in the dim light, their fizz harsh against the silence. Had he known? Richard's mind raced again. Had everyone known? And just as he gathered his thoughts to respond, something crashed in the distance. Glass shattering, a chaotic uproar erupting nearby. The crowd turned, alarmed, the luxury world colliding with the reality of chaos. Security guards rushed past, flanked by flashing lights and loud shouts. Richard's attention snapped back to Marcus, a burning intensity in his eyes, something dark and powerful. "They'll cover it up, just like they always do. But I'm tired of being invisible. Tired of living in the shadows of your towers." The city outside was breaking down, the facade crumbling with every sound of panic, mirroring the cracks within Richard. Panic jolted the crowd, socialites now flinching at a sudden suggestion of danger. Richard felt the tight grip of fear, not just for himself, but for the world he built. A world on shaky ground. "Marcus," he began, but the moment was interrupted. Another crash! A figure emerged from the crowd, wild and frantic, fear in their eyes. "There's a protest! They're coming this way!" The atmosphere shifted violently, and suddenly Richard's carefully constructed empire felt like a house of cards. The apartment towers, the projects that meant so much to him, now seemed like tombstones for lives lost. And in the chaos, with people shouting and the air electric, Marcus stepped closer, brushing his words against Richard's ear, low and chilling. "This isn't over. You'll face the truth, or lose it all." Before Richard could absorb it all, the crowd surged, pulling him in directions he didn't want to go. He lost sight of Marcus, lost his footing in the world that was fracturing. The billion-dollar question hung in the air. Would he confront his past, or let the tempest sweep him under? The crowd roared, no answers clear. Just the feverish reality of a man caught between fortune and humanity. The question hung heavy in the air. Will Richard Grey find the guts to face what he's done? Or will fear lock him back behind his walls? What truth was Marcus ready to spill that could flip their worlds upside down? Richard's pulse quickened, anticipation gripping him. Marcus leaned closer, eyes fierce. You've built your empire on the ashes of lives, but you don't know the whole story. A hush rippled through the crowd. The tension thickened, almost suffocating. Richard could feel the eyes of the elite on him, waiting, judging. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat, like a dam too heavy to break. What are you talking about? He managed, desperation creeping in. Marcus straightened, tension crackling in the air. Your family? I know them. I know the truth about why you made those choices. A collective gasp echoed. The crowd shifted, whispers swirling like leaves in a storm. Richard's heartbeat roared in his ears. Family? What did Marcus mean? Your father, Marcus continued, voice low but filled with power. You think he built this city? No, he stole it. Stole it from people like us. Richard's breath caught. Memories flooded back. His father's proud face, the old tales of sacrifice and struggle, the American dream painted in bright colors. But in those colors now swirled shadows, doubts creeping in like an unwelcome fog. You don't know what you're talking about! Richard shot back, his voice shaking. He worked hard for everything! But even as he said it, the foundations of his beliefs began to tremble. He could see the fierce truth in Marcus's eyes. Did he tell you the truth? How he bribed politicians? Destroyed homes for those towers? You think those spires are just brick and glass? They're built on broken promises. Marcus's voice rose, slicing through the air. Each word struck Richard like lightning, illuminating secrets he never wanted to face. He glanced around, catching the gaze of a fellow billionaire across the room. His old friend, Jackson. Jackson's expression was a mirror of disbelief and pity. The crowd was alive with murmurs, tension rising like a wave. Stop! Stop! Richard yelled, but the weight of Marcus's accusations anchored him in place. He felt the facade crumbling, felt a tightness in his chest that threatened to collapse him. And then, without warning, chaos erupted. A loud crash shattered the atmosphere. Not just a noise, but a physical force. The giant screen behind them exploded in a shower of sparks and glass, lighting up the night like fireworks gone wrong. People screamed, panic igniting in the room. In those precious seconds, Richard saw Marcus shift from anger to something deeper, almost sorrowful. This is bigger than you, Richard. It's time to wake up, he shouted as the crowd surged, trying to escape. But Richard felt rooted, transfixed. Suddenly, the screen showed something else. Images flickered, faces lost to time. People he recognized from faded family photos. There were children, families, a neighborhood swallowed whole by his father's ambitions. Everything in him twisted. Could this be true? Was he guilty by blood? Smoke filled the air, and Richard stumbled backward, the pounding in his chest drowning out the chaos around him. This was a reckoning, A destiny he never asked for. And yet, could this revelation be his only escape? Amidst the frantic crowd, Marcus met his gaze one last time. You have a choice, Richard. Change or keep running. But you can't hide from yourself forever. And as the flames licked the screen, everything Richard thought he knew about success, family, and himself swirled and burned around him. What lay beyond this moment? What choices awaited him as the shadows of his past closed in? Marcus leaned closer, his breath a flicker of danger, and whispered, "I've got a secret that changes everything." Richard's heart raced, thudding against his ribs like a trapped bird. The crowd murmured, their anticipation palpable, as if they sensed the gravity of the moment. The air shifted, heavy with tension. "Talk," Richard demanded, his voice barely above a whisper. But he felt the weight of every eye on him, the pressure to maintain the facade of the powerful billionaire. Marcus didn't look away, his gaze still fierce, unwavering. "I know who you really are," Marcus said, each word piercing the crowded room. Gasps swept through the audience, an electric wave of shock and curiosity. "I know what you've done." Richard felt a chill run down his spine. His thoughts tumbled like papers scattered in the wind. What could this man possibly know? The past he'd buried under layers of success and wealth was suddenly resurfacing, clawing at his defenses. "Are you ready for the truth?" Marcus pressed, his voice rising. The crowd leaned in closer, a sea of faces straining to hear. "Your so-called charity work? It's a cover-up. You're the reason neighborhoods disappear. Families kicked out without a second thought." Richard opened his mouth to protest, but Marcus cut him off. "You can't deny it. I watched it happen. I lost everything. My home, my family." Emotion pulsed in his voice, raw and jagged, pulling the audience closer to the edge of their seats. "Marcus, please," Richard stuttered, but the words died in his throat. This was the moment he'd dreaded but never expected. The moment when all his carefully constructed walls would come crashing down. And then, without warning, the lights overhead flickered. The elegant room dimmed, then brightened again. A voice, deep and booming, echoed through the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt this presentation for something urgent." A figure burst onto the stage, a woman, breathless and frantic, clutching a tablet. Her eyes darted between Richard and Marcus, panic evident on her face. "Richard, it's here! The files! They've released the documents!" The buzz in the crowd shifted to confusion and concern. "What are you talking about?" Richard demanded, fighting to maintain control over the chaos unfolding. The woman swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "The evidence of your backdoor dealings. The bribes. There's a consortium that's coming for you. They're saying you orchestrated the evictions." Shock rippled through the crowd, commingled whispers echoing in disbelief. Richard's face drained of color. "No, it can't be. Yes, they're on their way. Her voice broke as she glanced at the crowd, realizing the gravity. The tension thickened, an electric charge that made Richard feel lightheaded. The truth was unraveling, and he was losing his grip. "You're losing everything," Marcus breathed, triumphant, yet pained. "You thought you could bury your sins, didn't you?" Richard felt the heat of panic rising, realization hitting him hard. The empire he built was built on secrets, lies, and now they were surfacing. "This isn't over," he shouted, desperate. But even he could hear the uncertainty in his voice. Everything felt surreal. The crowd's reactions turned to a mix of anger and sympathy. Some drew back, others leaned forward with excitement. A divide began to form. Some were ready to turn on him completely, while others were still lost in their admiration. And in that moment, a siren wailed outside, growing louder, urgent, demanding. It echoed the thrumming of Richard's heart, threatening to engulf him in chaos. What were the consequences of Marcus's revelation? The truth hung heavy in the air, tightening like a noose. Would he fight or flee? The stakes were higher than ever, and Richard was teetering on the edge. The crowd buzzed with tension, but his world had shifted irrevocably. The night was far from over, and the shocking truth loomed large. Would Marcus's words cut deeper still, or was there a way to escape this reckoning? The storm was brewing, and Richard had no idea how to weather it. Richard felt the air thick with tension, each heartbeat echoing in his ears. Panic swirled around him, the crowd buzzing with fear and confusion. This moment could tear everything apart, unravel everything he had worked for. A desperate need to regain control surged within him. "Stop!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "This is madness!" But Marcus held his gaze, unwavering. "You have to face the truth, Richard." Outside, the sirens blared louder, an urgent call to urgency. They foreshadowed chaos. Richard's mind raced. He wanted to scream, to deny everything. But the truth hung heavy, heavy like the smoke starting to fill the room. Then, just as Richard scrambled to compose himself, a deafening crash interrupted the moment. One that shook the very foundation of the building. From somewhere up high, a massive beam broke loose, crashing down. The explosion of sound shattered all sanity, and people screamed as they dove for cover. Richard instinctively ducked, heat and dust swirling around him. The luxury venue turned into a nightmare. Panic exploded as the crowd surged toward the exits, a tightly packed mass scrambling to escape. The chaos felt alive, a living thing, swallowing the light, the happiness, the hope. Amid the confusion, someone stumbled toward him, eyes wide and terrified. It was Sarah, the activist. "Richard, you need to get out. The floors are collapsing." He barely processed her words. His heart raced, fueled by adrenaline and fear. He turned to Marcus, who was still standing there, resolute. "We can't let this happen," Richard yelled over the din. "We have to do something!" But before Marcus could respond, a sharp noise sliced through the air like a knife. It was a gunshot. A scream erupted, sharp, piercing. The crowd froze, eyes wide with terror, searching for the source. Richard's breath caught in his throat. Fear struck him like lightning. He turned to see a shadowy figure in the back. Someone holding a weapon, raised high. "Get down!" Rick shouted, instinctively pulling Sarah and Marcus behind him, shielding them. The figure shouted something, but the words were lost in the chaos. The gun went off again, another shot ringing out. Beanie beep beep, beanie beep beep, beanie 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 beep beep. Glass shattered, sending shards across the room. Richard could only see the chaos spinning around him, a whirlwind of panic and horror. He felt his heart pound, suffocating under the weight of it all. And then everything changed in an instant. The figure suddenly turned toward the screen, unleashing a torrent of bullets that blasted through the center of it. The screen flickered and burst apart, lights sparking, and then darkness. In that fleeting moment, a flash of truth lit up the chaos among the debris. A name on the screen, the name of the true mastermind behind Richard's empire. Someone he never suspected. "Rita?" he gasped, eyes widening in pure disbelief. He couldn't comprehend it. Everything he'd built, every decision he had made, right under the gaze of the one person he thought he could trust. And as the dust began to settle amid the chaos, the reality of it struck him hard. Richard felt staggered. The walls he'd erected to insulate himself started to crumble, reality shredding his life, revealing a darkness he'd never recognized. He looked back at Sarah and Marcus, their faces pale and filled with confusion. The crowd began to push against the exits again, but Richard was frozen, torn between the urge to run and the need to uncover the truth. Betrayal weighed heavily in the air, suffocating the room. What had he missed? What secrets lay tangled in this web? Then suddenly, the shadowy figure raised the gun again, pointing it right at Richard. "You'll pay for this!" A shouted, voice twisted in rage, a reflection of everything he'd taken. Time slowed. Richard's mind raced. Would this be the end, or a new beginning to the darkness that had been hiding in plain sight? In this moment of truth, all the uncertainty connected like jagged pieces of glass. Who could he trust? And just how far would he go to uncover the truth amidst the wreckage? Richard felt the air thicken with fear, and the adrenaline that coursed through his veins was almost unbearable. The gun was still pointed at him, this shadowy figure moving closer. Rage boiling under the surface. It felt like a nightmare unfolding, each second stretching into eternity. "Who the hell are you?" Richard demanded, his voice shaking despite his efforts to sound strong. Sweat trickled down his brow, and all he could think was how everything was collapsing, just like the buildings he once admired. The figure took a step forward, the intent sharp in their eyes. The room around them became a charged arena, every heartbeat punctuated by the chaos unfolding. "You don't even know what you've done!" they yelled, venom in their voice. Before Richard could respond, there was a crack in the atmosphere. A deafening explosion erupted from above, raining dust and debris. The chandelier swung dangerously, flickering light casting shadows across terrified faces. Everyone screamed, and chaos erupted as people scrambled to escape. But Richard stood paralyzed, rooted by fear and disbelief. Everything felt surreal. That's when the figure moved again, and in the flickering light, something about them looked familiar. "Wait!" Richard shouted, dread filling him. Recognition hit him like a punch to the gut. "It can't be! Jenna?" Jenna, his childhood friend, who had vanished years ago after a protest against his father's company, stood there, defiant, eyes blazing with hurt and betrayal. "You took everything from me," she cried, voice breaking, yet powerful. "You turned your back on us!" Richard felt the world shrink, the people around him blurring into a background of noise as Jenna's words bore down on him. Memories flooded back. Days spent laughing, dreaming of a better future, shadows of her innocence shattered by the greed that had taken hold of his family legacy. "Jenna, he stammered, panic rising. "I didn't know. I thought you." "Thought what?" She stepped closer, trembling but unyielding. "That you could climb to the top without consequences? That you could erase me from your life like I was nothing." Ha! The crowd shifted again, confusion morphing into fear as explosions echoed. The very structure they were standing in groaned, a menacing reminder of the fragility of their surroundings. Glass rattled like a warning bell, and Richard's heart pounded in his chest. "Everyone out! Now!" Marcus yelled, urgency breaking through his earlier anger. "We're all in danger here." But Jenna wouldn't back down. She was a force of nature, eyes alight with fury and pain. "You think this is just about you? You've put everyone at risk. You don't even know what's coming next." Suddenly, the sounds of sirens filled the air, louder than ever, blending with the panic around them. A loud voice bellowed from the outside. Something was happening beyond the walls. Richard stumbled back, trying to piece together the disjointed events crashing around him. "What do you mean?" he shouted, desperation creeping in. Fear twisted in his gut. "What's coming?" Then, as if triggered by that very question, the floor shook again. A shot rang out, this time more deafening than before, ricocheting off the walls like a battle cry. Richard ducked instinctively, his heart racing. He risked a glance up, just in time to see Jenna's terrified expression twist into determination. "Richard, no!" Jenna screamed, raising her arm in a desperate gesture. But it was too late. The gunfire resumed, and in that split second, the world collapsed around him. A flash, blindingly bright, erupted behind her, showering them in sparks. "Look out!" Richard shouted, but it felt futile. The chaos consumed them, and everything plummeted into darkness. Amid the chaos, just before everything faded, Richard had a realization, a life-shattering truth that twisted in his gut. Jenna wasn't just seeking revenge. There was something deeper there, something hidden he had yet to understand. Then, silence. The only sound was his own heartbeat, pounding in his ears as shadows danced around them. What had just happened? And how much of this nightmare would he need to endure before the truth finally surfaced? The smoke swirled as the emergency lights flickered on, casting chaotic shadows over the panic-stricken crowd. Richard struggled to breathe, his heart racing as he stared at Jenna, the very embodiment of his forgotten past. "Jenna, please! We can figure this out!" But her steely gaze didn't waver. The anger was palpable, swirling around them like the dust settling from the earlier chaos. One heart-stopping moment pierced through the haze. Jenna's expression softened, revealing the weight of fear beneath her fury. "You can't just walk away anymore, Richard." "Everyone, get out!" Marcus shouted, his voice breaking through the noise. The urgency was clear, the very walls threatening to collapse around them. Panic surged, bodies clustered together, scrambling for any exits they could find. Richard felt torn, suspended in time. He wanted to reach out to Jenna, to explain the choices he had made. But all he could see were the memories, the laughter, the dreams of a future, now replaced by shattered glass and broken promises. "Richard!" Jenna's voice broke through, cracking with emotion. "They're not just coming for you. They are coming for all of us. You have to stand up for what you created." Just then, Another explosion echoed through the halls. The ceilings trembled, dust billowed, and cries of terror erupted. Richard's instincts kicked in. "Everyone, follow me!" he yelled, eyes darting to the exit, searching for a way out. Jenna hesitated, her anger softening into something unexpected. Fear for them all. "What about the truth?" "The truth can wait," he shouted back, desperation clawing at him. "If we don't get out now, there won't be anything left to fight for." Rushing toward the nearest exit, Richard pulled Jenna along, adrenaline pushing them forward. Marcus and the others followed in a chaotic rush. The crowd merged into one, a singular entity driven by sheer instinct. As they burst onto the street, Richard felt the rush of fresh air hit him, a stark contrast to the smoke and chaos inside. But the outside world was littered with chaos too. Protesters filled the streets, chanting, their voices rising to a fever pitch as they demanded justice and accountability. "Look!" Marcus shouted, pointing to a massive screen across the street. Images flashed. Richard's empire laid bare. Documents detailing his family's corruption and greed. The truth was spilling out into the world, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. "They know," Jenna whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. Richard stood frozen, the weight of the world crashing down on him. He had built his life on lies, and now the truth was unraveling before him. A loud voice boomed from the loudspeakers. "We will not stand for corruption. We demand change." And in that moment, amidst the noise and the fury outside, Richard felt a surge of defiance rising within him. It was now or never. "They're right," he shouted, drawing everyone's attention. "I messed up, but I can fix this." People turned, their expressions shifting from shock to cautious interest. "If we can take down the lies, we can build something real," he continued, passion igniting his words. "No more towers built on pain. Let's build something together." Cheers erupted from the crowd, a wave of hope coursing through the chaos. Jenna's eyes softened, a flicker of trust returning. Richard took a step forward, pulling her into the movement. "We need to tell our story together. To change things, we have to face our past." As hands joined in solidarity, the atmosphere shifted. They were no longer just individuals caught in a storm. They had become a force, ready to fight for something better. Richard felt a connection to the very people he had once ignored, a heartbeat of shared humanity. But as the cheers grew louder, a shadow passed over the crowd. Above them, helicopters circled, and officers began moving in, their faces obscured by tactical gear. Richard's heart sank slightly. "This fight is just beginning," he whispered, determination swelling in his chest. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger, but they would face it together. Before he knew it, Richard was swept up in the energy and chaos around him, caught in a current of change. The past still hung like a cloud over their heads, but they were taking steps towards something new. There would always be shadows, but there was also courage and hope. But Richard now knew they'd have to fight for that hope every day. Would it be enough? You know what's coming next. You have to subscribe now. Don't wait even a second longer to hit that red button and join us for all the upcoming exclusive stories. And if you want to support the channel, smash that like button now! It really helps us spread the word. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this ending. We want to hear from you about this wild ride. And don't forget to share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see what happens next. This is the moment to show your support. Join us on this journey.